Morning, everybody. For those of you that don't know, my name is Anne-Marie Schubert. I'm the District Attorney of Sacramento County. Before I start, I'd like to just do some introductions on who is here today. We have, in addition to myself, Sacramento Sheriff Scott Jones, Ventura County District Attorney Greg Totten, Orange County District Attorney Tony Rakakis, Contra Costa County District Attorney Dinah Becton, Alameda County District Attorney Nancy O'Malley, Sacramento FBI Special Agent in Charge Sean Regan, United States Attorney for the Northern District McGregor Scott, Assemblyman Jim Cooper, Bruce Harrington, the brother of Keith Harrington, Irvine Police Department Chief Mike Hamill, and our Crime Lab Director Chip Pollock. Let me first by saying this. The answer has always been in Sacramento. For over 40 years, countless victims have waited for justice. Over these years, hundreds of individuals have sought justice for these victims and their families. Many have dedicated their virtual entire professions to seeking this answer. For many of us, it was more than a professional commitment. It became personal for many of us. For me, here in Sacramento County, in June of 1976, I was 12. I grew up in the east area of Sacramento, near the cluster of where these crimes began. My sisters ranged from 10 to 16 at the time. As I have said many times over the last 18 years, at least for me, for us here in Sacramento, it was a time of innocence in 1976. No one locked their doors. Kids rode their bikes to school. Parents let their children play outside. The only thing we were told as a family was you just needed to be home before dark. We did not have things like cell phones or social media. And then for all of us here in this community that lived in this community during this time, it all changed. For anyone that lived here in this community, here in Sacramento, the memories are very vivid. You can ask anyone that grew up here. Everyone has a story. But it must be remembered that it was not just Sacramento, that this case deeply affected this entire state. And then in June of 2016, at the 40th anniversary for the beginning of this series, the East Area Rapist, a press conference was held here in Sacramento, hosted by the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department and the FBI, attended by many agencies across California that have dedicated their careers and professions to coming to some kind of answer. The message was clear in 2016. The magnitude of this case demanded that it be solved. There were upwards of 50 rapes, 12 murders, crimes that spanned 10 years across at least 10 different counties, northern, central, and southern California. And it was that day in June of 2016 that we, in public safety, reiterated our commitment to the victims and to justice. In this case, the East Area Rapist, the Golden State Killer. And it was that day that we embarked upon what I call our journey for justice. A journey by people across borders, across all professions, police officers, FBI agents, crime lab employees, victim advocates, prosecutors, community leaders, elected officials, all with one mission: to find the answer, to give victims a voice, and ultimately to identify this person and bring him to justice. We brought teams together not long after that press conference. We dedicated more resources, more people, and we created what I have called Team Justice, an incredible collaboration of individuals with one mission. There are things about that journey and that commitment that each of us knew. The answer was and always was going to be in the DNA. We knew we could and should solve it using the most innovative DNA technology available at this time. We all knew that it would take passion. We all knew that it would take persistence. Last Wednesday at 8:15 in the evening, I received an email from the daughter of Sherry Domingo, who was murdered in Southern California. Her name is Debbie. She was 15 at the time. Last Wednesday, she emailed, in essence, I'm going to paraphrase, "Hi, Anne Marie. I thought the editing for the recent documentary was brilliant." She quoted from the show, quote, "This case will be solved because of sheer persistence." She went on to say, "I have those words posted in a few places in my home and my workplace, so I can see them at various times throughout the day. Thank you for that persistence. I have faith." We all knew, as part of this team, that we were looking for a needle in a haystack, but we also all knew that the needle was there. In the last 6 days, and I emphasize the last 6 days, that passion, that persistence, and the knowledge finally came to an answer in this building behind us here, our crime lab. Crime lab employees, DNA analysts who worked tirelessly in the last few days to provide that answer. Yesterday, an arrest warrant was issued, a complaint was filed, charging that individual with 2 counts of murder with special circumstances for the murder of Brian and Katie Maggiore here in Sacramento in February 1978. It is fitting that today is National DNA Day. We found the needle in the haystack, and it was right here in Sacramento. And with that, I would like to introduce our Sheriff, Scott Jones.
Good afternoon. Before I talk a little bit about this case, I'd like to make just a couple preliminary comments. When I became sheriff in Sacramento in 2010, there were very few outstanding cases that drew the passion and the interest and the dogged determination to solve as the East Area Rapist. The sheriff that I took over from, Sheriff John McGinnis, who's here with us today, told me about the importance of it. And I don't know that I fully appreciated it at that time, but I can tell you that without exception, weekly and sometimes more, I get telephone calls or emails to this day from former employees, former detectives, community members from all over this country that believe that they know or at least have some information on who the East Area Rapist was. I committed then to do everything that I could to solve it, and had a lot of conversations early on with District Attorney Schubert about how we could do it. And those discussions really touched the passion of both of us to solve this case. Both of us committed the best and the brightest, our hand-picked folks, to oversee the resolution of this case, and gave virtually unlimited resources and freedom to pursue whatever leads and technology currently existed. So I can tell you that over the last few days, as information started to point towards this individual, we started some surveillance. We were able to get some discarded DNA, and we were able to confirm what we thought we already knew, that we had our man. And yesterday afternoon, in a perfectly executed arrest, my detectives arrested James Joseph DeAngelo, 72 years old, living in Citrus Heights. I can tell you that although it was DNA ultimately that led us down the right road, there were a lot of places that road could have led. I don't want to underscore, I can't underscore enough, the absolute human factor, the dogged determination of not only the detectives working on this case, but the passion of the district attorney, myself, the community, and the victims. All too often we forget about talking about the victims. And today we at least brought the first step towards closure for those victims of these horrendous crimes. So I want to thank not only the district attorney and the crime lab and the DNA that helped us get here, but my own detectives and the detectives from all of these folks represented by the leaders standing behind me when we put together this working group 2 years ago and brought in the FBI, who was more than happy to be part of this team and effort. We had no way of knowing that we'd be standing here talking about the resolution of all of these crimes. So I have to thank them and again underscore the importance of the human factor and the dogged determination and passion of the individuals and human beings that led us down the right road to this individual today. I want to now introduce the District Attorney of Ventura County, Mr. Greg Totten.
Good morning. I'm very pleased to announce that this morning in Ventura County we have filed capital murder charges against Mr. DeAngelo for the March 1980 murders of Lyman and Charlene Smith. Our complaint alleges 2 counts of first-degree murder with 3 special circumstances, namely multiple murders, murder during the commission of a rape, and murder during the commission of a burglary. Now, while this filing is just the beginning of the prosecution of Mr. DeAngelo, it is the culmination of a decades-long, unrelenting investigation that's singularly focused on bringing this rapist and killer to justice. The arrest and charging of DeAngelo, frankly, would not have been possible without the visionary and innovative leadership of my friend, Sacramento District Attorney Anne Marie Schubert. And I want to thank her for doing such a wonderful job in this effort. She had the foresight to put together a statewide task force of, as the sheriff mentioned, some of the best and brightest law enforcement professionals in the country. I also want to thank Sheriff Scott Jones for the tremendous resources they devoted to this investigation and for the brilliantly executed apprehension of DeAngelo. I also want to thank my own Sheriff's Department for their great work in the crime lab and in the investigation, as well as the Ventura Police Department, which was the original investigating agency of the Lyman and Charlene Smith murder. This 1980 murder has long been a source of fear and angst in the neighborhood in which it occurred, in the community, and indeed throughout all of Ventura County. This is a case that, much like the rapes that occurred here in the Sacramento area, literally struck terror in the hearts of Ventura County residents. It also, as we know, was a source of great frustration for law enforcement over a prolonged period of time. In fact, this murder was among the first cases I was ever assigned to work on as a young law clerk in the district attorney's office in 1981. At that time, we had no idea that this killer was connected to so many other crimes. But thankfully, with the advent of DNA in the late 1980s, our understanding of this case, its depth, its complexity, its geographic reach, and the sheer scope of violent crimes changed forever. We recognized at that time we were dealing with a serial killer. And at that time, at a time when law enforcement is unfortunately under so much criticism, I want the public to know that the work on this case reflects the very best, the very highest standards in the noble and dedicated and courageous police profession. The men and women of this task force devoted incalculable hours, tens of thousands of hours, to this case. Throughout that effort, they never gave up, they never lost their resolve, they never relented, and today's announcement of charges being filed against this man, this killer, this rapist, is a direct result of their effort. And so now a new phase begins. And as we commence the charging and prosecution of DeAngelo, this too will be a team effort involving many jurisdictions working collaboratively and collectively together. Beyond the significant court proceedings that lie ahead and the immense investigation that is still ongoing as we speak, we are committed, we are determined, and we will, God willing, hold this man fully accountable for his crimes. Thank you, and it's now my pleasure to introduce the Honorable Tony Rokakis, District Attorney of Orange County.
Joseph James DeAngelo has been called a lot of things by law enforcement. He's been called the East Side Rapist. He's been called the Visalia Ransacker, the original Night Stalker, and the Golden State Killer. Today, it's our pleasure to call him defendant. His 12-year reign of terror lasted from 1974 through May 4th of 1986. He started with ransacking, sexual assaults, rape, moved down the state from Sacramento County and ending in Orange County. From 1980 to 1986, when he was committing his murders in Orange County, I was a member of the Orange County District Attorney's homicide panel and aware of these unsolved cases and just hoping and wishing that someday we would be able to find out who this killer was. The quest to solve this case was, of course, very personal to Mr. Bruce Harrington. His brother and sister-in-law were murdered in the most god-awful way. And he worked with the Orange County District Attorney's Office and other offices to write and support an initiative that later became Proposition 69. And Prop 69 was a proposition that was turned into law, and it was a proposition that required everybody arrested for a felony in this state and some misdemeanors to give a DNA sample. And it very, very substantially increased the DNA database of California. In Orange County, still keeping this case in mind, by the way, that case was a strong incentive to work on developing this database, the California State Database, which now has about 2 million profiles in the database. In the meantime, the Orange County District Attorney's Office started our own local DNA database, and we put about 170,000 DNA profiles of individuals who committed crime in Orange County in our database. All the time, we had this case in mind, eventually hoping to solve this case. So we've been working vigorously together with this task force that you've been hearing about. We've been working with them for since the original meeting that District Attorney Anne-Marie Schubert put together here in Sacramento. And Anne-Marie, I want to thank you for doing that. It was a great thing to re-spark this investigation, to put this task force together. It was something I'm sure all of the different agencies throughout the county who were involved had the case in mind, always wanted to solve the case, worked on it whenever they could. But with this task force, it was a concerted effort. We put resources on it, we put full-time people on it, and I want to thank the people from my office, the people who worked tirelessly on this case to work to attempt to solve the case. And I just think it's wonderful that it was eventually solved in Sacramento. And I want to take the time a little bit of time, just a moment, to recognize or remember the victims from Orange County. August 19, 1980, the defendant, Joseph DeAngelo, is accused of brutally murdering 24-year-old Keith Harrington and 28-year-old Patrice Harrington in their Dana Point home. He's also accused of raping and sexually assaulting Patrice. On February 5, 1981, the defendant is accused of raping, sexually assaulting, and murdering 28-year-old Manuela Whithume in Irvine. 3 months later, years later, on May 4th, 1986, DeAngelo is accused of raping, sexually assaulting, and murdering 18-year-old Janelle Cruz in her home. We've always believed, at least for many years, that this case would begin and end with DNA. This defendant's been able to live free in a nice suburb in Sacramento. Our team is going to work hard to make sure that he never gets out. We're going to be working together to make determinations about what the team's going to be that tries him, where he's going to be tried, and so forth. All of those things are going to be answered in a short time. One other note. In 2016, myself, my office, worked very hard with Ventura County District Attorney Greg Totten and with Sacramento County District Attorney Anna Marie Schubert to keep and to reform the death penalty. And that was a successful effort. It was a hard effort, but it was a successful effort. So now, as we proceed forward with this case, that remains a relevant effort. So I just want to say that finally, after all these years, the haunting question of who committed these terrible crimes has been put to rest.